Or
Congratulations, you've discovered another meta egg. They're rare, and today's a special one because we have two guests. We have Andreas and DCP from the Sink Tank, which you can find on Xirtus, the YouTube channel, every Tuesday night. Has been pretty regularly and steadily for how long now, guys?
oh, that's a good question. How long has it been?
Over a year, maybe.
Definitely.
I think it's been more than a year. I think it's been at least 2 years.
Wow,
At least 2 years.
that's pretty cool.
Because you mean back in the days of Eddie Lynn, right? Like
That's right. Yeah, we have talked to you recently. I think Eddie we're gonna do something someday. That's
Sunday.
Someday.
No, someday.
That's good.
Someday.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. You got to give Eddie Lynn's at least some respect for productivity.
I like Eddie. I do love Eddie. I was gonna say, if anyone's watching this on my channel, do me a solid, go over to the Meta Egg as a Mitzvah and subscribe and like and watch it also on his channel. Because he's doing a lot of other content. This is like a swap cast, but he does shows pretty much every other day. He's got like a short series he does.
About 3 times a week right now. We're steady. We need to do some more shorts, but thanks.
Yeah, I love your lives. I love what you did with Frank Zero. Everybody.
Ooh. Hey, can you tell everybody what we're doing tonight?
So yeah, well, what we're doing is we're helping Will do a podcast, and Will's going to tell you about it.
How about David? David, can you tell? Because first let's go over what we did last week, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the Beatles' White Album.
Yo, everybody, welcome to the show. We're doing Syzygy shows with MK Ultrasound, Synchronicity Research Music Videos, where you take videos and music, put them together, and you find out esoteric truths that were hidden from you.
Are you okay? So are you a Manson expert? Is anybody claim to be a Manson expert?
An expert? No.
I feel like the word expert means to have experienced, and since I've never been able to meet Charles Manson, I wouldn't say I'm a Manson expert. Maybe an aficionado.
Because there's 2 murders, right? Because I realized watching.
There's no murders at Marilyn Manson. I'm sorry, Marilyn. There's no Charles Manson murders, right? There's just a Sharon Tate murder.
Right.
And
was he even in the state though? Like I made the thumbnail make it seem like he was part of the movie, but I have no idea where Manson's whereabouts were. Like,
it's Spawn Ranch thereabouts. I mean, he got arrested for car theft, and then they realized while he was in jail that he was the guy connected with these girls.
But so there was wasn't there like a? Wasn't there a murder, and then they tried to do another murder?
There's 2 days. 2 main days of stuff, yeah. But I mean, it was
so Once Upon in Hollywood is just basically Leo and Brad Pitt stopping the first murders.
Right. It's Once Upon a Time because it's an alternate reality, and there's a specific point in the film where it shifts into this other timeline. It's very Philip K. Dick in that way because it's just really? Really. Because it's it shows how we're relating to something, because we're looking at the event through everything we've been told by the media or whoever, and different people have different levels of removal from that. And so in society, people were inundated with Helter Skelter, which isn't that dissimilar for me to the 9/11 Commission report. Like I said before,
when the girl goes back to the car. Because there's
right. So the shift happens when he looks back in the back seat, and and Tex Watson says to the girls, he says, Manson told us to do this, right? And then he says, you're not calling me a liar, are you? And he puts them on the spot, and there you can see that there's a forcefulness to the way he says it and everything that's implied in that, because we are left ourselves, since we weren't there, the only person that we really have to go on of what happened with that is Tex Watson and Susan Atkins and the actual participants. And so there
was no Leo,
right? So he's right, and so it's it was a film that Tarantino in a sense made for Polanski. And so when Polanski heard that he had made this, he had completed this movie, he didn't know about it until production was over. And he called him up on the phone and he said, I heard that you're making a movie about my wife. And he was very nervous. And because of everything, there's been a million movies on the Manson murders, but he's like Tarantino, like
Right.
he knows who Quentin Tarantino is. He's like, as a highbrow director as he is, in a sense. And so he's like, and so Quentin Tarantino's response to him is like, you don't have to worry, don't worry. And then Polanski loved it. But you have two trials that were exceptional in every way to any other trials that we've seen, and it was an anomaly for them to basically be like, we're not going to do this in a normal way. So like Manson couldn't defend himself, and the argument was, even though you're supposed to have that right, that his powers of psychic abilities could be enough to influence the jury. And so, but which is strange, because when you look at like what the job of a lawyer is, and I've witnessed this directly, in my life, I've witnessed the ways that a lawyer could just stand there and just lie. And you're like, really, you can just do that? Like, I don't, like there's definitely like, the court system's weird, but yeah. And then with Polanski, they were like, I think I mentioned, talk about this stuff last week, but it's like, Polanski's trial with Samantha Geimer, like that, if that would have been like a normal trial that actually took place, because it didn't really take place, he put him into a facility. They said, we'll determine if you're sane after a certain period in this time, or depraved, I believe was the word used. And the judge said, I'm so confident that they'll find that you're depraved. This is where it's going to go. And then when like a few months went by or whatever, and they said, no, he's okay, the judge was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll come back to this or whatever. And it scared, Polanski, like so he fled the country with that. But like there's weird things in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like the treatment of Bruce Lee. Like Bruce Lee was in Polanski's mind the first, like he was
Okay. So
he
you
jumped
think,
to that.
okay,
He thought that Bruce
wait.
Lee was the number one suspect. And so he actually had a pair of glasses tested that were at the location to see if they were his prescription, because he had gotten him a pair.
Plate.
Sure.
Jesus. Okay.
Sure.
So you're saying that Tarantino put Bruce Lee in Once Upon a Hollywood as not as something that it had something to do with Polanski?
Of course it did. What?
Yeah,
is that even a
because
question?
she was getting martial arts training
Yeah.
for a film that she was doing, and he was her
Let's
martial arts
remind people
instructor.
that Bruce Lee's like, I don't want to call him a chump, but like, everyone hated him, right? Like everybody hated him.
He was
Everyone
like
around him.
the yoga teacher from hell. He
Yeah,
was just sleeping with all the Hollywood.
Like,
Right.
And he thought he was so much better. He was a narcissist. He thought he was so beautiful and so much better than everyone. He thought he was so much better at martial arts than he really was. And, like he
Well, so
upset.
I've heard about his narcissism and stuff like that. A lot of people say that's what led to his death or whatnot. Like he took out
I
his
have my own
glands.
theories on that. I mean, that's a
all
larger
kinds of
conversation.
Definitely led to his death one way or another. Yeah.
Hey, but this brings up another topic, dude. I got this theory, right? It's like certain things have gravity, right? And that creates, like, the gravity creates the sinks or whatever, or the connections, or the
Right.
obsession.
The gravity
Or
of this
is that because
event. Yeah.
people get obsessed, or is that because people are obsessed? Like, I have to, I don't know. I have
two
to
levels to it.
fall on the side
yeah.
of like, there's things people miss, right? There's
the contrived side of it, which is like the mythology that we're inundated with in general. Like there's a Hollywood mythology, and so like there's that, but then there's also like what is just almost just mystical. Like how do you explain that? And so you'll find that with like tragic events in general, and whatever we treat, like the death of one is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic. Like it's how we're relating to it is what makes it what it is. So we're but there's something beyond that. It's hard to explain that. It's like there's a line, but it's a line in the sand between what it is that we manipulate and what it is that's the event itself, like the reality of that event,
Okay, so Rosemary's Baby came before the murders, right? Because
Rosemary's Baby came in 1968, and this happened in 1969, and
almost like a year.
Sharon Tate became pregnant with the production, the same as Mia Farrow, who ended up having Sinatra's son, but she didn't know if it was going to be Woody Allen's or Sinatra's because she was sleeping with both. and that was during the filming of Rosemary's Baby. But so
Andreas said something in Sync Tank, and I can't remember exactly what you said, but you were like, when you watch it with the music like this, it kind of like, I don't know, see it from the filmmaker's point of view, so to speak.
Yeah,
I was trying to find a clip also from the Isle of Wight. So you got 1968, Rosemary's Baby. 1969, you have the Sharon Tate murder. 1970, you have the Isle of Wight festival in August, I think. It's like around, so it's about a year after, and it's when theoretically Charles Manson should not be released from bail, right, the entire time. But if you watch the footage of the Isle of Wight Joni Mitchell concert, which I find also interesting for Joni Mitchell's connection to the Beach Boys and to Laurel Canyon, but also to what's his name, Terry Melcher, right? Terry Melcher was the like one of the musical producers who worked with Joni Mitchell and Charles Manson. I pulled up the clip if you want to grab it.
I'll put it in the private chat if you can.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me see. I'll find it. Basically, somebody who looks just like Charles Manson shows up and interrupts her concert. And it's really interesting because it's like, theoretically, it shouldn't be possible that he would be outside of the United States. But it is, like, it seems like it is completely possible that somehow.
Well, it's weird because it's okay. So when I was studying the whole case of JFK, like I was going through the files, Manson fit the profile of all the dudes who were suspected of being involved. Like there was like a certain build and a certain way. They all thought that they were religious people. Like
no, they had that's a whole other thing. They had their
no,
own,
but it's not. It's not though. I'm telling you,
they had their own religious
like,
sect order that they came up with, and they were all bishops in it. There was no congregation. They used it as a cover for fucking meeting up.
Who are you
and
talking
not
about?
Being,
you talking about?
with.
You talking about?
You're
Manson,
talking about JFK?
No,
the
I'm saying that in the papers for JFK and both the assassination papers in like 76 and the Garrison files that happened in 68, 69, like, it happened at the same time. I'm saying that if you look into Manson, he has like all of these different aliases. He thought that he was like a traveling performer, and he also thought that he was like leader of like a religious congregation. There's a whole
go to 20 minutes
dudes, including Oswald, including Thomas Beckham, including Manson, and including like a few other of the like Reverend, I can't remember what his name, Brashears. Anyways, Kevin Bacon in the movie. That's who it is. Anyway,
yeah, all those guys, they had their own.
They were all like they fit a profile that was very similar. Especially Beckham fit a profile that was very similar to Manson, and they were all wrapped in like this weird like the MK Ultra network.
Okay. Well, click on the present. Just click on that present screen button for a second there. You see that little square?
All right. Let's see.
It's a little Windows as Andreas Xirtus right there. Just click on the.
Okay.
Probably better to do it through me because you always get in trouble when you try to share anything. They hate you.
Oh wait, hold on. We need to stop.
What?
Okay. Why?
Oh, you have it playing in the background. Don't listen to the music. Just look at the screen I have. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
I was going to suggest looking at the album cover of Norman fucking Rockwell and and why it's relatable to all this.
Which screen am I talking about?
Just a little. Here. It's just right down. Oh, yeah. Well, so first, just click on the one I have open because it'll be way easier.
I don't know how to do that.
All right, down below. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so look at this picture right here. This is just really for 2 seconds. Joni Mitchell's playing, and all of a sudden, this guy shows up, and he starts.
Zach Bauer? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Does he not look to you like maybe he's not
Manson?
No, he doesn't look like Manson to me. Sorry.
Okay.
I could see
he does have a big beard, but you know who does look like Manson is at the very end of is it 13 Chairs? So if you look at the final shot of 13 Chairs that actually plays during the credits, That character looks incredibly like Charles Manson.
So what was the
But,
reason
so
you
do you-
picked this album?
Okay, so
like
the-
because there's
the-
other
okay, so-
albums that have to do with Hollywood by her.
Right, but this isn't just Hollywood. She's making specific references throughout this album, and it's similar to what happened with Honeymoon. Honeymoon also makes similar references, but who is that person who she's got her arm around? So that's Jack Nicholson's grandson. That's Duke Nicholson. And so in every other album cover that she had done up to this point, it's always just her by herself. So a lot of her fans got upset because they were like, well, who the fuck is this guy? Like they're like, but and he's on a boat. What is the significance of him being on a boat? You gotta understand, like the thing that happened with Samantha Geimer, that was at Jack Nicholson's house, which also had a tunnel to the Playboy mansion.
So we're
All
talking
work and
about
no play, make Jack a dull boy.
murder number 2.
Playboy. But the thing is that when the murders happened, Polanski was on a ship at sea. I don't know how you scout locations at sea, but apparently that was what was going on for Day of the Dolphin, which is a movie about assassinating the president using a dolphin while the president's at sea. And so that was originally going to be Polanski's film. It passed on to somebody else. I found this before. I've been looking for it recently again because I want to like cite my sources well. But I found it said by some key figure that the first person on the scene besides the police after the murders of Sharon Tate was actually a psychic. And so he's like a Hollywood psychic, and he came and he said a bunch of shit, and you can look up what he said pretty easily if you want. But beyond that, apparently, like they didn't, like the sunshine cleaners, so to speak, like they didn't clean up the full mess. And so like Polanski was coming back to the house, and there's a crazy iconic set of photos of him in front of the door that had pig written on it. For the Beatles song, piggies. What is it? The little piggies. But anyway, Jack Nicholson apparently helped clean up. Jack Nicholson and the head of Paramount supposedly helped clean up the mess before Polanski got there, or tried to. And so like
here's the whole thing in Chinatown.
Right. So Jack Nicholson's all wound up in it. He also did Chinatown with Polanski. Right. So and he's in that film. And then there's crazy connections there with him. And so Norman fucking Rockwell is, yes, it is making specific references to Hollywood mythology throughout it,
right?
But
like if you can think of like a Charles Manson painting with done by Norman Rockwell, like the whole destruction of like the Norman Rockwell time period, so to speak.
You got it, yeah. And so like
I have a stink I wanted to bring up on that though too, just real quickly. So because we're talking about Peter Herkos, because you brought up the Dutch psychic, what he's really famous for? The other famous celebrity he's interested in working with was Elvis Presley, right?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So Elvis Presley had a number of consultations, like several at least consultations with Peter Herkos.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because he was way into that, wasn't he?
Well, I would just also associate that with like the West German military experiments and Jeffrey Dahmer, like serial killers, like it's the same. Like Jeffrey Dahmer went to the same military base as Elvis Presley in Germany, and the association with these para-Germanic and Dutch psychiatrists and psychologists, I find that interesting, just because it seems synced.
Yeah. So the judge during the trial with Polanski, he said to him, and there's a recording of this, I've seen it, where he says, "I've been watching your films, and I have to say, I've noticed like I have such bad cotton mouth right now. I'm so sorry. You gotta drink some water.
I'll drink some water in solidarity. Everybody drink.
Get in the body, David. Get in the body.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing podcasting for a while now today, but So he
said,
I'm
sorry
I noticed
to jack both of you guys off your daily
No.
schedules, but I appreciate it.
It's fine. So he said, I noticed that there's a water theme throughout your films, and it's true. You look at what was Polanski's first film was Knife in the Water. And then you have certain thematic things that reoccur, like the blade, the blade or the syringe landing on the floor and sticking straight up, oranges dropping, oranges being spilled. There's these symbols. And so literally the judge is talking about a synchronicity that he picked up on. It seems really inappropriate because you're like, whoa, dude, like justice is blind, bro. Like, what are you saying? So he's reading into it, and so, but he was saying, I see this water theme, and I find it interesting that this incident happened in a hot tub. So the judge is like, synchronicity, isn't that weird? But it's like accusatory too at the same time. And so, and what's crazy is then when you look at the Manson thing with the White Album, it's like he is literally like doing the same thing that judge was doing, according, if you entertain the Helter Skelter, the book written by the prosecution, is what it says it is. But you know, it's very, very, very odd.
Washing your hands, Macbeth. Wash your hand, like the Chinatown. Isn't it the whole water district thing?
Yes, and that's all about the water in LA. You're absolutely right. It's crazy. The Tenant is about Egyptian magic. He went back and forth a lot of the time between occultism, witchcraft, and the CIA or intelligence agencies in general. And so like even if you look at, you know, and Frantic has that scene where you're looking at the Statue of Liberty upside down, and Harrison Ford turns his head and it becomes right side up, but it's in France because he's in France at the time. You know, it's strange. Yeah, Bitter Moon.
So would you relate it then to like Schaefer or like Flo, or what do you think about with the water and Polanski?
His water fixation. Well, he survived the Warsaw Ghetto, and so he describes an event that actually shows up in The Pianist, where the pickles, like he found pickles, and it was like a can of pickles, and it was like he describes the way that like the pickle juice was just like he was so precious, you know.
Oh no, there's like a big water scene, isn't there? Like a whole piano gets dumped in the water or something like that. There's like there's a lot of water scenes. And wait,
in The
look
Pianist?
at that.
Yeah, Oliver Twist. He did, yeah.
It might be. I might be confusing it with The Piano. I can't remember. There's like.
Well, you're also talking post that incident, and so like that was 1980, and so actually, and you know what, Alex?
Oh wow,
Alex has a whole amazing like set of like the day that happened, like works into this whole crazy code. There's like a Polanski Kubrick code that's just insane. I can't do it justice, but yeah.
I was trying to think about like the only scene I can think of with water in Once Upon a Time with Hollywood is when he's shooting the Lancer. You know, he's making like a Western, and then he has that conversation by a pool, right?
Well,
not by an ocean, but by a pool, like a hot tub, right?
So one of the things that I noticed about that pairing was that Summertime was like the center of the album. Like
that's what it felt like to you.
Oh man, it was the scent that made like when Summertime, the scene. Well, first off, like the other movie, the White Album, there's a changing of scenes with the songs, right? They're like the mood will change, or you can tell like that the subject has moved on to a different total mood.
Right, totally.
And what is the song you're playing during that scene with the little girl and the cowboys? You know. Which one is that song again?
When they're sitting on the steps, you mean?
Yeah.
Part?
He's smoking
or chairs, whatever out there. Yeah, this scene, that's Bartender. So it's like she's having a conversation with the bartender. And she's
I find it really interesting.
She says she makes a point in that she's not drinking alcohol. And she's like, I'm drinking cherry Coke.
But he is
that scene like, because that's also like then, so this is the illusion, is that scene, and then that's also happening. And that song is really weird. Like she's like she's being drugged. And then it's cut to him having a conversation as an actor, not in the movie, but as an actor by the pool.
There's a feel of pedophilia. There's a feel of like
it's an innocent
the young
song.
Girl's in a very adult situation.
It's not like a lot of her songs, because it's like she's connecting with a bartender, and it's just like there's an emotional connection. But as to the best of my memory,
it's Summertime though. The whole thing has water through it, because every time the guy goes sits in the swimming pool. And he goes and listens to his headset, and then that's where the last girl comes out, and he fries her in the swimming pool.
I think that that scene, the first time that Summertime plays, and Brad Pitt goes to his trailer, which is by the drive-in theater. I'd have to check, but that might be the same drive-in theater that is in the music video for that song on this album.
I would make sense.
She comes out of the screen. They reenact Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, which is in Pulp Fiction. So you know when they go to the Twist the Night Away contest at Jack Rabbit Slim's, and you look at the wall of all the posters and everything, you have an Attack of the 40-Foot Woman. Is that what it is? Or 50-Foot Woman? 50-foot. But anyway, she imitates that movie in that music video for this album, where she like comes out of the screen. And so there's like a whole meta aspect to it too. I'd have to check, but I think it might be the same drive-in theater. And if it's not, they're both LA drive-in theaters. So it's a very, and that's a quintessential LA song. And she doesn't do it the original version. Who did that originally? Was it Nina? Who did Summertime? I mean, I know Janis Joplin helped make it more famous.
Oh, you mean like the original "Summertime"? The Rhythm Is Easy by oh, come on, do it. You know, great
I almost
Jewish
said Nina
composer.
Simone, but
Gershwin, like
oh,
something Gershwin, right?
okay. I don't know, but
Gina?
you know, so she's singing the Sublime
Ira
version,
Gershwin, George and Ira Gershwin.
and the Sublime version is all LA. And so this is like she has a couple like quintessential LA albums or whatever because she moved there, but like she's originally from like
Summertime is from George and Ira Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, right? Which is like the African American opera. It's the first American opera. Right?
Why do you think it's the center of the movie, Will? That's interesting.
It like,
I mean, of the album,
it anchors it down to when I got the Summertime both times, I was like, okay, there's definitely a relationship between the movie, because and the first time when we saw the Rosemary and the White album, there's no doubt there's a relationship between the movie and the album. But I had a lot of questions.
Porgy and Bess is one of the most important works in American culture, right? The idea of an American Jewish son of a rabbi making a jazz opera musical that has to do with racism and biblical connotation. For instance, one of the major songs that plays around Summertime is "It Ain't Necessarily So." The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, they ain't necessarily so. So I feel like
it's not really that a cover. It's basically a Sublime cover, and it's so like uncharacteristic to the whole rest of the album. It's weird.
I think that's another example. The fact that Summertime for Sublime is like the center of their album.
Right. And what are we looking at? We're looking at August of 1969. And that's where it goes, you know, and they did jump forward.
Like the Summer of Love. It's like there's like this whole like weird thing about, but it's also a little bit poppy. And see, the weird thing is this like isn't my favorite album of hers. Like I would have put this with something else because I would have wanted to hear other songs.
Album. Hilarious that you have a favorite Lana album, but I guess you're a father.
Lana's weird, bro. She's got Gravity. Like fucking Jason Barrera went nuts on her ass.
She's not that big.
That sounds so wrong. I didn't mean to say that.
I like the tie into Porgy and Bess because I've done a cover of that. I think it's important for artists to connect with Gershwin because that's the introduction to playing black keys in music, in American music, really, like because of jazz. And to say that this is opera is to say that this is America, that this is objectively okay.
That's an anagram for by the way, is I turn black keys.
There's like that's who Tarantino's dad was. Tarantino's dad was like a piano player for like the old movies or whatever, or something along those lines. And
is that true?
Yeah, because there's a scene where the guy's like talking to the piano player at the club and stuff. And I've heard interviews where Tarantino's talking about like how that was his childhood. Like, because that's the thing. I realized that there was a relationship between the movie and the album because they both tour around like Southern California. They're both anchored in Southern California.
Oh, completely. Yeah, they're both based in the same place and the same time. So back to the bar where she sings, back to the bar where the Beach Boys used to play, Dennis's last stop before Kokomo.
Right.
It plays in the album right after Manson shows up at the house in the beginning because he went there. That's true. But they're misleading in the movie and it's fine. But like I think I said this last week, but the guy, we should look him up. He was in Cul-de-sac. If you look up the IMDb for Cul-de-sac, he's an actor who it was actually like she refers to the triad in the album, and that's the way that they treat it in the film, that it's this triad because you have Jay Sebring and Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate as a triad, but really it was this other guy. It was actually a foursome. There was film found of their own pornography that they did together, and the way that the treatment, like the way that the cops treated it is one thing, the way the media went with it was another. But you know, because he was a director, so they filmed their goings on. They were a very sexually free thing, and they were known like that. Like that's how people treated it. Like they were connected to the freedom of the 60s in people's minds and in their own lifestyle. And so, you know, that's why it's considered like the death of the 60s. And this is in the face of the Vietnam War, where all these soldiers are getting sent away to get killed. And, you know, for a lot to do with just us fighting Russia through their northern Vietnam, you know. But this was happening in the midst. And so you have this like this really interesting thing, like it speaks to something in our conditioning or our programming or whatever, that we are like, what is the measure? It's like one time I remember going online like AOL and just seeing the news for the day, and it was like so and so kissed so and so on Friends, and then it was like some crazy shit in the Middle East, and they were like side by side, like they were equal news stories, you know. These are both headlines, and I'm just like, wow, crazy the way that we can do that. But yeah, what are we looking at here? What did I say?
This is cul-de-sac. What did I say?
Oh, cul-de-sac. So I'm looking for. I said IMDb because I wanted to see the image of the actor, because I can't remember his name. So if you go to IMDb, then I can actually figure out which person that is. I mean, Donald Pleasance is in it. He had a Beatles connection big time. He played on an album with Paul McCartney where it was about a little mouse that's in the snow on like Christmas night. That's like while people are inside like celebrating or whatever. And he did it with Ringo Starr. Or no, that was with Paul McCartney. I just said that. But he also is in a collage inside of a Beatles album. Donald Pleasance is. You probably know him from THX 1138. But no,
yeah, that's right. He was. That's not what I would have thought, because
I don't know who
I think of him as a John Carpenter actor.
I think of him as like the Escape from Witch Mountain. In Escape from Witch Mountain, he's the guy who finds the kids. He does so many great roles, though. You know,
totally. But
I mean, the THX 1138, and then like George Orwell's 1984. It's kind of like he's really loaded. I think that's why Carpenter used him. Carpenter used him a lot.
Go look this up on IMDb if you could, real quick.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Aye, Captain.
It's fun to do it on my own screen while Will does it, because like some people tell me I'm really good at it, but it's only like when I see how poor Will is at it that I feel that good at it.
Yeah, scroll down. Just go to actors, man.
Dude, you're shaming me.
I only do that because I love you.
Go back up. You went past it. Bro. Okay, scroll, go, cut, arrow. Yeah, give me another one. There he is. Is that an I that it starts with?
Ian Quarry.
Yeah. So point being, long story long, this is the guy who actually answered the door for Manson in real life, but in the movie they show it as Jay Sebring, and it's the reason being is because this guy left not just Hollywood, but the whole movie industry, because he was so in love with Sharon Tate. He was so devastated that was it for him. And you never see him appear anywhere else.
Wait, Donald Pleasance, you're saying? No. Ian Quarry. Yeah, sorry. I was like, what? Yeah. That would have been wild if it was Donald Pleasance. Yeah.
Yeah. So he and it was out of respect for him that he's not going to, he's doing the movie and he wants to show that this happened, but he
holy crap, he did the first Vanishing Point?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Because this became a really big thing. This movie was like a pre-summer blockbuster before Jaws, kind of. And so much so that it became a TV movie at the end of the 70s that had Viggo Mortensen in it. It's just a weird movie that I've seen. Like I say, I watch shitty movies.
Right. But you also made a video about that too, where you included that.
Right, because it's important. Like it's the horse. The car is like the horse.
Right. And so you tripped me out with that in a major way that relates to all of this, because there's the thing with Red Rum. So Red Rum was that famous racehorse at the time of The Shining. And so what was Kubrick's film The Killing was about killing this racehorse. And so I'm jumping all over the place. I'm sorry. It's the only way to do it. This is synchronicity.
No, that's why we have you here.
So if you look at John Lennon's album of what is it? His final album before Milk and Honey, Double Fantasy, the one that Mark David Chapman had signed by him before he killed him. So like if you look at they made a version of the album called Double Fantasy Stripped Down, and one of the last things he says in the last song on the album is make him an offer you can't refuse, as a joke. And then he goes, ha ha ha. And what is that overtly a reference to? The Godfather. What was the offer that he couldn't refuse? What did he do? He killed the guy's racehorse and he stuck it in his bed. If you look at the album of Sgt.
The horse
Pepper,
head.
and you see all of those are cutouts, and there's a still from Stanley Kubrick's The Killing that's hidden in the cover, and you can find this if you look up the making of the Sgt. Pepper cover. They had different characters in there, including Adolf Hitler, who didn't end up in the final version. But you can actually see this guy's shoulder and part of him in the final version. Like, he's still there, but he's got his gun aimed at the Beatles. And so I can't remember if it's Paul or John, but it's one of the two that his gun is actually aimed at. I think it was actually John. Yeah, sorry.
So there's also the Megan J thing. Like, the lore behind the Double Fantasy album is really interesting, right? Like, I don't believe any story from the Beatles, but I love their stories. So the story is that John Lennon survived a major sea voyage. He was on he was in a storm with a crew that the entire crew couldn't take over the boat, and he had to man the boat for 6 hours or something like that to save the crew and to weather the storm.
That sounds like a George Washington story or something from his youth.
Right, yeah. And it's like, and that's exactly where I think John Lennon was at with himself, that he would be like, yeah, I should have a John Lennon story for my Double Fantasy album, right?
Right.
Well, what is a Double Fantasy? Yeah,
there's lots of weird things. Yeah, well, totally. Well, if you listen to the album, it kind of communicates that, and that's actually it should be another sync that we continue from here. Is the
to take and to be took.
It's full circle.
Chapter 27 would be where we would head next. Right?
Maybe maybe, but there's also no, seriously, because there's also full circle. And full circle, or the haunting of Julia. So John Lennon's mother's name was Julia, right? It means
okay. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Like, how much connection between the Beatles and Manson is there?
Tons, you know, especially through like Phil Spector and everything else like that, right? Like,
it goes on and on.
Yeah, I feel like Phil Spector is like 1 degree of separation. I wouldn't say that they're as close as the rest of Topanga Canyon, but by 1969, the Beatles are pretty much done, right? So they're independent.
You gotta there's the way that Sgt. Pepper came out and the way that Pet Sounds came out, and so in this album, like certain things that she's speaking to, you know, there's a nostalgia for a time that's before her time, but she's singing about it like she's completely connected to it, as though we're just always in that place on some level, and that's kind of what Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does. And it treats it that this is a malleable thing. It's always been malleable because we got a story, and like that has a certain narrative, and you can go in all kinds of directions with it. And
one way or another, the Beatles disband. John Lennon quits the Beatles within 2 weeks of the Sharon Tate murder.
So that connects to Donald Pleasance too, because the reason that he gave, that he said the bigger than Jesus comment, when asked shortly after that, while people were burning the records, was because of a book that he was impacted by called The Passover Plot.
Oh,
and the Passover Plot is the theory that Jesus basically took a drug that allowed him to basically die, and when they took him down, he could come back with this drug, like it put him out.
And then Juliet wakes up and she's like, "You didn't leave me any poison." Yeah.
But the thing is that there's like a movie made of the Passover Plot with Donald Pleasance.
Really?
So and it's actually a Zalman King movie. And so there's also
in that's why I consider him. I mean, he's the dude who is the cop off of Halloween. But he's also
Aleister Crowley in Escape from Witch Mountain. Like, when the leader is trying to get wizards and astronomers to find out the truth of everything, he's saved because the little girl tells him,
he's in this movie called the Prince of The Prince of Darkness.
Okay. There's also 2 movies that came out right around the same time of Barabbas. There's Give Us Barabbas and there's Barabbas. And one of them has Sharon Tate, and the other one has that guy who I was just trying to remember his name that we found. Who is in Cul-de-sac, which I forgot already again. Sorry.
Yeah, with Jack Palance. Jack Palance with his big old chin. Palance, yeah. So wait, what is that? Is that movie just? What do you think? Well, elaborate. Is that movie just like a a classic, movie, or is there deeper? What's so deep about
What's that? Barabbas and Give Us Barabbas. One of them is a Hallmark movie, and I think that might be the one that Sharon Tate is in. And then, and so yeah, it's just he plays a lot. Is it Elijah? I forget how that whose
Wow.
character was, but yeah, no. So anyway, there's these connections that exist. Sharon Tate's first movie is called 13. Her last movie is called 13 Chairs. There's definitely a lot of symbolism going on. So she seems to be attributed to the high priestess. Like the high priestess is the 13th pathway from the top. It would be the Gimel if you're going from the bottom to the top of the tree in order. So you have like, if it's in reverse, you end up with the high priestess there. So I don't know. It's interesting. There's also like Marilyn Manson had his whole thing with like 13 because that girl. What's the name of the girl that he was with? Is it was suing him, or he was suing?
Oh,
I guess
Kate McGowan, or a different one?
No, not Rose McGowan. The other one that's actually I can't think right now.
Jane Doe.
A lot of information to keep track of, but her first movie was 13, or at least one of her first movies. So I have a whole theory that
Miss Bianco
Marilyn Manson is really kind of like infatuated with her from like the symbolism that's inherent in 13.
Evan Rachel Woods and Ashley Morgan Smith.
Evan Rachel Wood.
Yeah.
And she was in Westworld,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's the Manson chick, right? The Amber Heard version from Charles Manson.
So he's basically projecting Sharon Tate into her in some weird way. And so that's the thing. She's 13, and Sharon Tate was 13 and 13 for her first and last films that bookend her career. Yeah, there's a lot to that. But I was gonna go somewhere. Oh yeah. So, Duke Nicholson. Look up Duke Nicholson. Go to his IMDb if you could. So he was in
I'll let Andreas do it.
I'm already done. Wait, no, that was Jack Nicholson's nickname is Duke, but also
that's the guy on the cover, right? Yeah, that guy. You could totally tell that's it.
Right. But look up his IMDb.
Dude, he's got like Jack. It's like a caricature of Jack's jaw, like that. His facial structure is like over the top. What Jack is known for.
So check this out. Go to film.
That jaw, dude. That's like a Superman jaw.
Don't be so jealous. No, I was kidding.
His catalog.
Actor, previous. Is this his complete list? Yeah, actor. Okay.
Yeah. It's not long. So so you have
Pizza Delivery Boy.
Look at the first thing that he's ever in is this music video for the Dandy Warhols called Catcher in the Rye, where he plays J.D. Salinger. Okay. So this is the guy.
So it's Mark David Chapman. It's the whole conspiracy theory about the Catcher in the Rye being some sort of like programmer.
Right. So this is the thing. Mark David Chapman only spoke once before in the entire time, and it was to read a paragraph from Catcher in the Rye where it explains it's the section about the rye where he's trying to save the children from running off the cliff. This is solved in another book by J.D. Salinger called The Last and Best of the Peter Pans, where it turns out
for a fact there's other Nicholson's books that reference the Catcher in the Rye. That's weird.
Right. So check this out. So this other book is a sequel to Catcher in the Rye, where J.D. Salinger explains what the meaning is of that paragraph, and where the kid who's a relative of Holden Caulfield, he gets drafted, and the mother hides the draft card, and when she explains to the child why she hid the draft card, she says, "Because I'm protecting the children from running off of a cliff." And so there's the whole thing that he had the bet in, right? It was he did an advertising campaign for peace. John Lennon did, and so this all like ties into it in this really weird way. But I don't think Mark David Chapman had read The Last and Best of the Peter Pans. In The Shining, in the opening scene of Wendy, of Shelley Duvall, she's sitting there reading. She's reading Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, she's reading Catcher in the Rye.
And what is her name? Her name is
Wendy.
Wendy is a name that did not exist before Peter Pan.
Right.
Wendy
she's
was not used. That's you can look
but
that
that's
up.
what
But
the
it's
whole
Google.
Also, Rye has to do with
idea
acid.
is. But that's
Right.
that like man-child. You're talking about Peter Pan. Man-child is mentioned over and over in this
You got it.
pairing because
Yeah, you got it. And it's in the
because you're
text
talking
of all
about
work and no play make Jack a dull boy.
right.
Because
But
it says
Manson is
make
like a
an
child
adult
man,
boy.
right? He's Peter Pan.
Yeah, it
right?
repeatedly says adult boy in that typing, and L and T are pretty far from each other on the keyboard, and that mistake happens so many times as Shelley Duvall is flipping through those pages.
Right. You think it's intentional. Yeah.
It's an adult boy. And so so the whole idea
Man-child.
is that what do they do in the Rye? What was the meaning of Catcher in the Rye? It's a song about having sex in the Rye when you're young and no one can see you. It's hidden. You can always go out to the Rye to have sex. And so
Right.
there was actually, they speak to it in the book. They say it was sung Dixieland style. It's a different style. So it's really fucking in the Rye. That's the meaning. So the idea is if you combine that with what happens in Last Best of the Peter Pans, a sequel to Catcher in the Rye, you can see that it's about war because it's saying you could stay home and be having sex in the Rye, or you can take those energies that you'd be putting into that and do what the military does with that, where to get a kill is the equivalent of getting laid. So they're basically like because they couldn't get people to shoot at each other in World War I, and then people would fire over people's heads. And they were like, how do we get them to do that? Because they have to sexualize it. That's why they name their gun a female name in the Marines. That's why the whole treatment of it is this psychological, like talk about like a massive fucking psyop. The military knows how to do that. And J.D. Salinger was a vet, and his military history is pretty shrouded. And so there's,
somebody mentioned that follows through in the Mel Gibson movie for conspiracy theory. Like that's where it was popularized.
It does. And where does it culminate?
As well as
with
the
a
three,
horse,
as well as the three
horse
names,
in
as
the
well
movie.
as the three names. See, that's what I'm saying. Like Manson fits the profile of other dudes who I feel like fit the category of Mel Gibson's character and conspiracy theory. So if we use Mel Gibson's the character he is in that movie, right? As some sort of like plant that the MK Ultra Men in Black Patrick Stewart people control, right? I think there was a whole bunch of these dudes and they were all similar in structure to what we consider to be like Lee Harvey Oswald's body type. And that includes Manson. I think Manson.
I don't know what you mean by the body type thing. I mean,
so they could be confused for each other. Multiple individuals, if you read the papers, multiple of these guys had like the same look.
Oh, I see what you're getting at, maybe. Okay, so Peter Levinda was able to show that Mark David Chapman was in multiple places at the same time before leading up to the murder in Hawaii as well as in New York. And so he makes an incredible case for that. It's
right. So Mark David Chapman would fall inside the same category. Like if you put, I'm telling you, if you put like Carrie Wendell Thornley, Lee Harvey Oswald, Mark David Chapman, and Charles Manson in a lineup, and you had them all shaved, they would all look similar. Like if something had gone down, you could have totally confused all of those guys as the same dude.
Right. Well, the whole
That's
thing
the whole idea of a patsy.
Yeah, but when Manson showed up at that house and he meets not Jay Sebring, but that other guy, he thought he was going to Terry Melcher's house. Like this is spoken to in the album. Like it's crazy because it's like it's speaking to that he's reaching out to somebody. He has his ambitions or whatever. He wants to be a big musician, but for them to do that with that, knowing they're like, because they're this is really a significant house. They've been told. So Manson showed up there looking to find Terry Melcher. He wasn't there. He says goodbye. That's that. Girls show up with Tex Watson, and you better fucking believe that there's crazy dynamics of jealousy, weirdness in there. Because you're like you're treating it like it's a free love movement. What free love was for Polanski and Sharon at that time in their life with Jay Sebring and what's his face, like, that is not the same dynamic that's going on with the fucking family. Because do you think that Tex Watson was just like totally cool with him being the guru of the group or whatever? And do you think that those girls weren't having fucking crazy weirdness between them while they're just fucking tripping balls all the time like they were? Like that's just it's crazy, you know, like just the name. Like there's one girl that I actually kind of like, and that's from what's her name? Fromme. Can you type that? Can't remember her name, but she aimed the gun at Reagan, loaded, and didn't pull the trigger. What is it? Squeaky Fromme. Thank you. I'm just I'm remembering information, but I'm tired. But yeah, no, Squeaky Fromme. You know, she did, as far as I know, she didn't kill anybody. And for her to get to the point where she did that as kind of like a statement of just to like let him know something, like that is fucking fascinating. This girl's a trip. And so for America to look at these girls, we were treating it that it's like, look at these girls who slummed it. They couldn't have possibly have done this on their own. And that was what was so horrifying. That was the horror of America that they experienced with those murders. Wasn't just the tragedy of we lost a Hollywood actress and all these other people, Jim Morrison's hairdresser. You know,
as a child,
like these girls would do this on their own. You know,
as a child, she performed on the Lawrence Welk show and at the White House.
Wow.
Just me.
No, I'm telling you that like her life story is just a total trip. And she's like, when it comes to these girls, she's the only one that's like, I think I kind of like her, you know, like just her life is just fascinating, you know, like, I don't know, I would necessarily want to be friends with her, but I'm like, of the group, you're like, dude, you read it from almost everybody else. And you're like, oh, sketchball. And she's sketchy in her own way, but it's kind of fascinating, you know?
It's kind of blatant sketchball though. It's like, it's got gravity, dude. It's got weight. Like if she's not part of it, like in this reality, it's the next reality. You know what I'm saying? It's the one right next to it if we're in a multiverse or some shit.
Demon Stream is saying Charles Manson was not a killer, but still a weirdo, LOL. And I think that's kind of the point. They're like, look, here's somebody who looks he's not clean shaven. He could easily.
I don't even know why people make the point out of saying he's not a killer. The dude was obviously
I think it's important to bring up because the fact that you get life in jail for not murder is an interesting thing. No, I mean, it's something to bring up.
That's a true statement, but is it based off the fact that the dude was evil?
No, it's clearly based on the fact that he's a weirdo. Being a weirdo in 1969 was still a thing that could happen. When you think about the hippie movement and everything like that, but your parents in the 50s were looking at 1969 and worried about it. And so this guy represents, he looks like all the things they're worried about. Not just the hippie. They're worried about their daughter going off with this guy because
he's got it. He's totally got it. Yeah. And it's tied to racism, which is what one of the big issues with fucking Manson is. But what's crazy is that like Manson, like if you listen to the stuff that he says, he doesn't sound dissimilar to a lot of what I see on the internet nowadays all the time. Just like fucking, you know, there was the Watergate break-in, and that happens on a daily basis too on the internet.
This brings up the whole point.
Like break and enter because it's digital now.
Is he manufactured or not? Like, is that opinion on the internet more prevalent because
everyone's manufactured? The fact that he didn't have his own family in the White House and everything to raise him in an orphanage and foundling, I would say like that level of influence is important.
It's influence. Yeah. That's the key word there. And so that's the
it was the original.
Like when you talk about any conspiracy theory, you're talking about relative control. You don't have absolute control. Like if you think that fucking when you're looking into a crazy ass conspiracy theory that actually looks like it's checking out, and you're like, oh, the Illuminati are in control. Right. That's not where those lead you. They lead you to a place of like you're like, wow, no one knows what the fuck they're ultimately doing, but they're all you know, and it's coming from all sides. And then there's elements that are like variables that you just can't explain. And that's what I love about synchronicity is that it's just data.
Yeah,
you know, you can just add up the data, and the syntax of that will speak volumes in these weird ways that, like, this information alone, like if you can get there with it. And so, you know, there's also an emotional connection, and so like I see that like a lot of these things, like this album pairing thing, feels like it's emotionally charged from people that. I don't fucking like, I don't know what it is completely. I just get an inkling of it. Like this film becomes holographic if you're relating, if you recognize all the, like, even on its own, even without the album, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's got so many different things connected to it. If you know that parts of that history, that it's just like, it's not, you're not watching the same movie if you're familiar. Like, I saw it in the theater. I sang along with Never Say Never to Always, and I was by myself. You know, I mean, I didn't go with somebody, but there's like all these people around me, and when they're doing the dumpster dive, it tripped them out. But I overheard these people talking when they came out of it, younger people, and they're like, "What was that movie even about?" And like, I realized, I was like, "Oh, they watched a different movie because they don't have all this context." But the same thing is true with the Lana album, is that she's making specific references, and those references tie in with the backstory of the thing that you're watching. It's like the Satyr chorus in Greek tragedy. There's a malleability to the thing that has to do with the observer. So like, it's an observer experience, and you can't separate the observer from the observed. You know, they're intimately tied. And so, you know, you could say like, I put these together or whatever, but I feel detached. Like, I turned up the volume in between the vocals with the film. I, you know, set the timing the way that it wanted to be, apparently. Like, I just did that, but like, I facilitated something, but I don't have like a connection. Like, this is something that I did, which is what I love about it. Like, I used to paint and draw and stuff, and I would like give most of that away. Like, I have very little to show for like years of artwork. But the thing that I love about digital art, like getting into digital collage and then these album film pairing collage, whatever you want to call them, like, I don't have to relate to it like this is me. And that's very freeing to play with art, you know. And I feel like, you know, musicians and, you know, media creators, like, it's almost like they're working together, but they don't have to know that. Like, it's like, you know, but maybe they do. I don't even know.
No, because like, there was that show that I just had with the dude from, well, talking about PKD. PKD wanted something to happen, but he knew that he hadn't built that foundation for it to happen in the movie. And then when he sees even just a little part of the movie, he's like, holy shit, I did it. Like, he feels like there's a touchdown, because there's all of these different moving parts to the movie that he can't control. And yet the message still got relayed. Like, the message that he wanted to send still like came across. And I think that that's like, that's what's at the root of this. Like, it gets confusing because there's so many different moving parts.
Right. This is also like, this is as much Barton Fink as it is A Serious Man. Like, what's going on? Because like, Barton Fink is somebody who really prided himself on what he was able to produce, and he was applauded. And then they took that and they made like, they forced him into this place where he had to just write boxing movies, like B movies or whatever. And he's like, I don't know anything about that, you know, like, I'm coming from this other place. And there's like, but then he's forced into that. And it's like, he has no choice in there's something to that. Like, I think that artists are like, there's a manufacturing element, right? Like, they're kind of like, many of them are molded, and like, it's not always just like their own like expression. It's like these actual, like, the production companies like have so much say over like the creative direction of whatever the fuck it is that they're producing for some people, that it's like, they want to get, if they're a real person in there, they want to get some, if they have anything of depth or of value, they're producing a superficial thing, but it should bleed through. You should be able to catch it. I relate to the album film pairing thing. Like, it's like, if you entertain that there's any, you know, any relationship to them, to that media in that way, it would suggest that they have something personal for themselves. So in other words, like, there's certain.
I asked you earlier, is that the key point between this movie and this album? Did they come out in the same year? Is that why you paired them?
Yeah, they came out in the same year. Pretty sure.
Okay, so how close were they? I asked you that earlier, and somehow we went off on another tangent.
Well, they just resonate like crazy.
They do, but it's not obvious. Like, on the face of it, it was not as obvious to me as,
you know, when Margot Robbie goes to the movies as Sharon Tate in the song plays, and what it's speaking to.
She goes
I'm writing with blood on the walls because the ink in my pad.
She goes to the Wrecking Crew, which has like so much connotation to like Laurel Canyon anyways. You know,
singing about writing with blood on the walls.
Yeah,
like, it's so direct.
It's direct.
Ridiculous. And it's emotional too. So that's the thing. It's like the Full Circle one with Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey. Like, that's Mia Farrow and Keir Delay. So 2001: A Space Odyssey, David Bowman with Mia Farrow. Their child chokes on a green apple. What does a green apple make you think of?
I've
You know what I
seen
mean?
this. Yeah, I watched this.
And
This
so,
was
and she performs a tracheotomy, and the child dies.
because
And
it's Star Baby. It's
it's
Star Baby. But 2001
Well, also
was
Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the Green Apples that turned them all to stone.
right. Apple. Oh, it's
well, they're
slow.
both films
There's a
that are
lot.
about
There's so much
childbirth.
gravity there.
Rosemary's
Apple
Baby in
Records.
2001. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Apple
And
Records. Yeah.
well, it's the Son of Man. So the
Yeah.
Son of Man painting is the explanation for why they have Apple Records. So you know the image with the
And Eris,
with
the Lady of Goddess, yeah.
right. So if you watch Bronson, you know he does a thing where he makes
Thomas
the other
Crown.
guy that, and he ties him to a pillar, and he paints him like the Son of Man, and he has, you know what I'm talking about, Bronson.
Yeah.
And so like there's a sync with that with Bobby Boussolet, which ties into this too, because the Manson killings were, according to the girls, a potential copycat killing of their friend Bobby Boussolet, who was starring in alongside Kenneth Anger in Kenneth Anger's film Lucifer Rising. And so,
and if you say Bobby Boussolet and Kenneth Anger fast enough, you get Bobby Kennedy, which is also kind of a thing.
I've always wanted to make a hip hop rhyme with Bobby Boussolet.
So what about Margot Robbie being Sharon Tate? Like
Valley of
like,
Dolls.
okay, so
Barbie.
earlier I said, hold on a second, because like I noticed how much the movie revolved around Margot just because of the soundtrack. Like her
God, when you have the pool scene and she's playing "If You Lie Down with Me," I had to look up the names. I don't know the names of all the songs by heart, so I had to like listen to find it. But
right,
like that particular bit, you know, because you've got the dog, you know, when they go to the SPCA, so you got this kind of video of like checking on the dog.
Oh, that's right by Alan Michaels' place, Digital Debris, the gallery in East LA, where they go to the dog place. That's right there. Yeah.
The idea that our love is a lie, you know, like the songs.
Stop it there. Look at that.
Michael
Look at her fucking face in this shot, dude. She looks like freaking Lana. And I even like at the time I like shared a still from it on the.
I got a fucking thing about Lana Del Rey though, dude. Like I could not pick Lana out of a lineup, bro.
Oh really?
Like she looks different to me every time I see her. She's like weird.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, she's changing, but she looks who she looks like. Yeah. To me, she's pretty obvious. I could pick her out of like a crowded.
Margot Robbie has the same thing.
Fire, and I could Margot also. Like I don't know. I get that all white people look alike to you, but I don't think it's that.
I think she actually resonates with Mama Cass.
Yeah,
and, you know, Mama Cass actually, she's at the Playboy Mansion in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was, by the way, that was a scene where when we showed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at Digital Debris.
Yeah,
did a screening with my art and everything, and these people came in. Michael told me afterwards, did I say this last night? I can't, or not last night, but last week, where this woman was walking out, and she said she watched like 8 minutes or something, and she's more than one song, you know, and she was like, it was that scene that she walked into the space, she witnessed that, and she was walking out, and she said, I don't know what the big deal is. They're just in there watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Right. I'm like, you watched my sync for 8 minutes and you didn't even put together that it was that.
You did a really good job. You did a really good job, just like the last one.
It did itself. It really did.
I know, so because it's on time. I could tell that it was on time. Like the measure would end and somebody would say something and you would just drop that one line. And you also did a very good job.
Interesting associating Mama Cass with Lana. Also, I mean, you've seen like she's gained weight, which is like it's not a big deal. Sorry, the pun, but just the idea that she's gotten larger and like the way Mama Cass, you know, do you think that she's becoming or that she's always related to her?
I think she's I think it's been there a bit, but she's developed. And that's the thing I love about Lana, and I probably, you know, the same thing with Jason Barrera, you know, and his whole thing is her and David Bowie, that he sees all these correspondences there, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Totally.
He sees her as an archetype.
He sees her as continuing on with like a torch of like a spirit that belonged to David Bowie, you know, kind of this idea of sharing souls, kind of. It's like, or passing a soul along, and like it's also similar to what happened with Jim Morrison with the hitchhiker, because his meaning of the hitchhiker is like he's got a hitchhiker. It's an Indian. There's like, and it's his version of Nietzsche's story where the neighbors killing the sheep in the thunderstorm. Are we good to go past the hour?
I'm good as long as you guys are good.
I'm great.
Okay, keep
Oh,
going.
you're muted,
Keep
though.
talking, David. You need.
Oh, I'm
some
sorry. I'm
space.
just looking at pictures of Lana Del Rey since she got thick.
Okay.
So,
I got no problem with it.
yeah, so you know that song. There's the Ghost song.
What the fuck is that?
There's
This is Lana. This is Lana today. Lana looks like this now, which is great. I think.
Yeah,
I'm
I could
for it.
not pick her out, bro.
I don't think she
like
does look like
blends
that
in.
now. I think that's still an older picture because she's wearing a mask, and I don't.
Yeah,
think
that's
she
true.
looks like
Okay,
that.
well, let's do 2024.
You know what? Yeah, you know.
Yeah, look at that, dude. Like every single video I've ever seen of her.
Some of
like,
these are AI
almost looks
generated,
like
which is
AI.
funny. Look at the apple of Discord, bruh, right there.
But Eris, yeah, okay,
Zeno's paradox.
got you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I don't remember where I was going with
Touche.
that. I was about to say something interesting, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What was I just fucking saying before that?
Something
Lana Del
interesting.
Rey archetype.
Yeah, whatever.
Thinks music.
Oh yeah, I was saying something about like the way that her style is developed. I guess I was saying more than that, that she kind of stepped into herself in a different way, you know. But like that's what you get when an artist has been around for a while, and you especially when they were young when they started, you know. But it's not all artists seem to develop in that way where they get more depth. Sometimes they get less depth, and you're like, oh, what happened? There's like whatever their experiences, they kind of drift
Have you
off.
used how extensive is her catalog? I don't know.
I have a sync film for every one of her albums,
Well,
and
that's what my question was.
all online. But
Bro, I got a theory. I got a theory that all of Leonardo DiCaprio's movies go with Roxy Music albums.
I can already see the beach in my mind, and you're not wrong. Yeah.
He's in the movie about the world's biggest plane and the world's biggest boat, Aviator and Titanic.
Yeah. Clearly, he has a complex about something not big. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's the Aviator made the world's biggest flying boat. It's so weird because like there's a definite thread between Leo's movies. I think that he's probably one of my favorite actors, but that's the issue. Like that's where we have to get to in Meta Egg, right? Because it's obvious. There's certain things that occur over and over and over and over again in actors' careers that are almost like dreams, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Bro, you and I both know Andras. Andras just did this Radio 8 Ball with the International Dream Society, because his dad was like a dream psychiatrist, so he knows those people.
Yeah.
And his whole angle is mostly to do with dreams. I mean, with his angle is synchronicity. Their angle is dreams. Right. But they understood it because it's the same language. Mm-hmm. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Totally.
So like,
yeah, well, that's the thing I was saying too, like in the last conversation I was having about like Freud and Kabbalah, because and that's largely doing with synchronicity. Like, what is gematria? But you're working with synchronicity. You see connections between things based on data, on just like its own mathematics, and stuff emerges out of that you just can't deny. Like you can derive the Fibonacci sequence from Bereshit, from Genesis. And it's like that it's long before Fibonacci was around. So there's all kinds of stuff like that.
There's a lot of stuff like that in Job too. I don't know when Job was written, but like I was trying to tell this to Zach Bauer the other day. Like I was like reading Job, and I was like, they're talking about like splitting light. And they're talking about all kinds of things that were not even like concepts until like way after they were written. I mean,
that's recorded. See, that's the thing, is that how ancient people thought and how they articulated those thoughts on a scroll. Like there's no way we can only what we can entertain their actual experience was, but you can get kind of closer to it when you're transcribing text a little bit by just looking at all the different words to describe one thing.
Right, it's all about the words, right? Because it's all like the words change.
You almost have to establish what the thing isn't before you can even get near what it actually is.
I think that's why their movies and albums work, though, because it kind of like takes you out of the context, and so it creates like like Andreas said it when you guys were doing Think Tank. He was talking about how like all of a sudden you see how the filmmaker thinks. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You get what it totally takes you out of the scene to where you're thinking like Tarantino thought. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is he trying to say here? Why is he using this angle? Why are we at this pace? Why is the scene?
This
like,
is why I describe it as like a meditation, because what I'm doing as I'm taking these in, which I've been doing for so many years, you know, like it's an interactive process. It's a way to interact with the media. But it's also a way to like relate to the material in a less like intellectual way. Like as I'm talking about it, as I'm articulating with you, it may sound like it's like an intellectual thing, and there's that element for sure. But the music, if you're musically inclined, it's the Seder chorus. Like it's what's between the audience and the actual performance. And so like it works really well if you're familiar with the material. This one works well for me because not only am I familiar with the movie, I mean, it's my favorite Tarantino film, although I consider Pulp Fiction his best film. But like it's my favorite. It's the one I enjoy the most because it's got so much going on. But what Lana illustrates is like is another level to it that's more like heart. So it's like I've already
okay. So this is something that I've been meaning to say like the whole night, but we keep getting sidetracked or whatever.
Sure.
Okay, so check it out.
Okay.
Like everybody talks about. Okay, so this album is a love album. It's like a love. There's love songs. Like we were talking about the White Album. The White Album is lullabies. This is love songs. This is like
lullabies too, for sure.
Well, sure. They're soft. They're really soft love songs.
Right.
But you get to see that it's a love movie.
Right. Well, it cuts. It's love. It's love songs.
It's between Brad Pitt and Leo, because these are two capable men who really don't need each other, but want to, like, there's all of the heartache that Lana Del Rey is talking about is basically talking about these two man-childs. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like,
totally. And who is that speaking to as well? So she has lines in that album. I don't know if you caught the scene with Charlie, where there's a guy on the screen with the beard, and talk about people that look strikingly like Charles Manson, but you know that it was intended that way. Sharon Tate, the night of the murder in the film, is watching something on television, and the character looks strikingly like Charles Manson.
Who's coming for her? Right.
And there's a line, I wish I remember this perfectly, but there's a line that speaks to that as they show that figure. She says, if you're a serial killer, then what's the worst that could happen to a girl who's already hurt? And then she speaks to him too, because she says, you're already hurt. So it's not just her. She's talking about that, you know, why she's, you know, why people would be like, you know, don't go near them or whatever. But she's like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know, but she's like, she has compassion for that character in that song. Like she's not, it speaks better than I can communicate it if you watch it. But you know what
There's a couple of times, I can't remember exactly but what they are talking about is like directly on the screen multiple times.
So, you know, the meme where he's pointing forward, you know, where he's kind of jumping out of his chair, you know, Leo. Well, he's watching, what is that show called? Something Roads. What is it? The Streets Have No Name or something? No, The Streets. Fuck, what is it called? We have to look it up. But, or if you can jump to that part of the thing, but,
I wish we had Andreas. No, I'm just kidding.
Just kidding.
That's fucked up. That's fucked up.
No.
I was just using him to produce my show. Shameless.
Back if you're listening right now, Andreas, come back.
Come back.
But no, she says a line about all roads lead to you in the song. And she says like the 405 I drive through every night and every day. And then like the thing that he's watching on the screen communicates roads. I think it's the same words almost. What's the show? We can look it up. Do you want me to look it up? Is that what's happening?
Oh, okay. Describe it to me again. I'll do the best I can.
Okay. Look up Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Type that in. Sorry, it's long, but the Streets show. Right, streets and show, and it should come up because it's, you know, it's a movie with the scene.
Once Upon a Time Street Show.
Yeah, do you see it? What are you looking at?
No,
Should I do it?
I don't.
Fucking do it. Sorry.
Where'd he go?
Wish I could remember mine.
I gotta check on my dad. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that out loud.
Show. Once upon a time. What browser do you use?
It doesn't matter. He did it some way where what he wanted, if you hit present, I guess I could.
Oh, all the streets. It's called, oh shit, I get the preview, but I can't see the full thing. But it's all the streets, and she goes, all the roads lead to you. So, you know, it's close enough, but yeah. I don't know. There's just, the point is that there's all these places where you're literally looking at the thing that she's talking about as she's talking.
That's what it is. It's like a tour.
It crosses a line because everything syncs with everything to some degree. That's just the way of things. And so, but this does that thing where it crosses the line several times.
It crosses the line several times, several times, just with attitude, with pace.
There's an identity thing of like where she's like, you know, in the movie they'll be, you know, asking her name, like when she shows up at the movie theater, and then you listen lyrically, and she goes, "But I'm not," and she keeps repeating that, like Lana Del Rey does, and it's like she says her name and she says, "But you know," but she's like relating to the person while literally saying, "Yeah, but I know I'm not you, but I have this." And it's relatable. This is how I feel. And it's just like that these things could happen. Like you don't know what could happen. And so you're looking at Sharon Tate before the murder, like shortly before, and she's just going about her life.
I could see why where people would like, unless you knew like the whole idea of like the Easter egg is sort of like this thing that someone understands before they even come to the movie. I think that the problem with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that the younger generation doesn't have the same impact. Like they don't know what that day was for her. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like Tarantino did. Why is Tarantino watching this woman? But you totally get the focus in on her the whole time because of that album. Like you're no longer paying attention to Brad Pitt and Leo in the same way that you were.
Did you get the secret message at the end with Batman at the end of the credits where it has a Batman thing of it's like Batman and Robin, and it's a contest. They say watch the show for the secret code, and if you catch the secret code and you call this number, you have a chance to win. Like,
is that on the album? Is that on the Del Rey album?
No, that's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So that's how that movie ends. But the thing is, there's a crazy connection there.
Wait. There's a certain thing where a man's talking that happens multiple times in the viewing of the show. Is that because that's on the album?
Oh, there's a gap. There's a gap, and then there's a man talking. Yes. And so I turned up the volume during that.
There's like a hidden track thingy.
And then I turned down the volume of the film so you can hear what he's saying. And he said, he's asking if she's real. And so he goes, am I going to wake up and, you know, this isn't real. You know, the album's real. You're not real.
Right.
And he goes, he's like, I hope that you're real. So like for me, I'm watching something. It's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but there's this strange, like, it's like, that speaks to me, like, because experientially, I'm like, is it saying like, you know,
it's the movie. Is the movie real?
The movie's not real.
Like,
and then they all laugh afterwards the first time that they play that. And the second time that they play that is when that, I forget the Manson girl who ran away, but she didn't go with them. And so it's like, that's, and they, so he says, what does he say when he comes in the house? And
I am death or something like he.
And, but it's Brad Pitt. Like, are you real? He goes, and he tells him that he's real, you know, when he enters the house, because he's on acid.
Because he took the joint with the acid.
Right. And
they do a great, like
that. He goes,
man, the scenes, like the music brought point that like he lights that joint. He walks with the dog, Brandy. They're pulling up when he's walking. You know what I'm saying? And then they do this back and forth thing. And it's so poetic with some stuff that you miss
stuff that you're paying attention to so many things during a movie, right?
Right. Yeah. There's other context too, because when when Sharon gets in the car with Polanski to go to the Playboy Mansion, and that song
Yeah.
that starts right when they're pulling out. So like not the song that plays in the film, which is Hush, but then I dropped the volume out of that. It goes so smooth. But that song that comes in is in my car in the backseat. I'm your baby. We go fast. We go so fast.
Right.
And they're
Because the whole
driving
thing is
along
cars.
fast with the
thing.
wind, because they're in a convertible, and it's like describing like literally what the treatment of it, and the context too that goes beyond it is that Polanski has a documentary that he made about his fixation with race cars. And so
there's this weird transportational thing.
Mm-hmm.
So because there's this weird thing with when we're talking about cars, you can see the horses in the back of the ranch, but there's also the whole feet fetish thing. So there's just like walking, running, racing.
Right. He was a
idea.
car thief, so he was basically a horse thief for the modern era. Manson was.
Oh.
And they were stealing cars for him, and that's why he got arrested initially. The first people to visit him in jail before they realized who he was, before that even happened, were Scientologists. 2 Scientologists who had other connections beyond that. They were like, but yeah, that's a weird one to get into. It's like what they were even doing there. It's like they fucking knew whatever.
No, but that's like Scientology is like related again to the whole Manson thing.
People say that he went to
not the whole Manson, the whole Crowley thing. Crowley.
Right. Yeah. There's oh man. Yeah,
Scientology, because Crowley's secretary was L. Ron Hubbard. So there's this whole idea of them trying to, like, again, we're talking about Crowley as in relationship to Manson, and Manson's relationship to
right. Okay, so
Rosemary's Baby.
Let me drop something on you. So I was explained by a musician that this guy Rick Walker. He started the Loop Fest. He was big in Europe or whatever. But this guy was telling me this whole story, and I won't do it justice. But that who was it? Was it Terry? I can't remember if it was Terry. It was one of the Beach Boys. Went to or was it Dennis Wilson? Maybe, probably Dennis. Went to London for the first time, and he was like gonna meet a Beatle, and I believe it was John. And I'd have to ask again, but I'm pretty sure. And they met up, and he had with him the first pressing. Before it was released, the demo of Pet Sounds. And he played it for, I believe it was John, I'd have to check, but he played it for him. They sat through the whole thing in silence, and then when it was done, John was like, let's play it again. And they listened to the whole thing twice, both sides of the record twice, in silence. And after that, he went back to the Beatles, and he was like, guys, they were working on what would later become Sgt. Pepper. They'd scrapped that project. That's one of the reasons why there's some extra Beatles, tunes out there that didn't make it onto that album, because he was like wanted to start from scratch because of what the Beach Boys were coming with. This was Terry Melcher's house prior to it being Polanski's. When he went there, he was looking for Terry. And then he's like, Terry's not here. And then the girls do this whole thing and text. And so it's, oh man, it's strange. And so, yeah, I know.
To be real, somebody just said Django was a teenager's comic book or something dorky. But come on, man. There's something dorky to all of Tarantino's movies. All of Tarantino's movies are dorky. In the same way that all of Frank Miller's comic books are dorky.
Wasn't it? Sorry. I'm asking, I guess. Wasn't Django a 1970s film that was already made, and it's a remake that takes a lot of creative liberty? I thought that's what it was. Kind of like Jackie Brown being a general.
In the same way that Jackie Brown did. Jackie Brown did the exact same thing.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, that's what he's doing. It's 1966. I wonder if there's any. I mean, it's Sergio. So Django. Okay, here. Let me bring it up here. Django is it looks like a spaghetti western.
Oh, 1966. I stand reflected. Yeah, I said so.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So whatever. It's a good movie. And it's got Leo in it again. So he's got Leo in those 2 movies. Does he have him in a 3rd movie? I don't know. Can't think right about.
Well, the person who uses Leo the most, of course, would be Scorsese. Scorsese's used him
Woody Allen
More.
used with Celebrity, which is probably the truest to his actual character in real life. Just kidding.
Well, I noticed that Winslet.
I don't really think that.
Winslet also is used in all of them. Like, because we were looking at, she's used in a Polanski, like Polanski's last movie had Winslet in it. And I know like Woody Allen used Winslet also. And so I feel like they use those two individuals, both Leo and Winslet, because of their success from Titanic.
So if you on the SyncBook website with the movies, SyncFlix, there should be a video on there of the downward spiral with Titanic and with the final sequence of Titanic. So it's not the full film, but the way that I came to that is actually in the rounds that the album would make if you started from a certain point at the beginning. But it's you can get the full length of the album through the sinking of the Titanic. And so the downward spiral was actually recorded at that house on I always mispronounce it even though I'm saying all this information because I'm so book learned, but is it Celio? It's not Celio. I always say Celio and I think that's wrong. But anyway, that house was a recording studio. Marilyn Manson recorded Portrait of an American Family around with the equipment set up around the exact spot where Sharon Tate was found. And then Trent Reznor had used that space for recording all of the downward spiral. And so he actually used the door that had Pig written on it as his studio door in New Orleans. And that studio, which was supposed to be like the best studio in the world, or one of the best, was taken out with a flood. So it got flooded and he lost the door, which is interesting because Titanic culminates with the door at the end, right? So they're on the floating door and there's not enough room for Jack, apparently. So Hurt plays as he's dying in, when they're at the door. And it starts from the slap of Billy Zane slapping Kate Winslet. That's where you start the downward spiral. And so it's pretty crazy. And so he did Trent Reznor did Year Zero which really proved that he wasn't so reliant upon that studio to be able to produce what he did, because that is a phenomenal album that is pretty much a par in certain ways with the downward spiral, in my opinion. Double album, and that was just
doing sync videos. I noticed that it was easier to keep a film up online if you used a soundtrack. Right. But Trent Reznor has done so many freaking soundtracks now.
Right. So the downward spiral is Helter Skelter. If you look up what Helter Skelter looks like, could you do that? Just look up
yeah.
So people can see it. There's often like
look up Helter Skelter. What do you mean what it looks like? What are you talking about?
Helter Skelter, the ride that it's based on, where the term Helter Skelter comes from. I mean, Manson used it to mean confusion, but the ride is a spiral slide. Do you see it?
I thought it was Helter Skelter.
Show it. Come on, you gotta share your screen. Just type in Helter Skelter ride.
All right, well, hold on. I got it. Jesus.
Yeah, you see that?
Sorry. Yeah, but I didn't know that. I didn't know it was a ride.
You didn't know that? Yeah, that's why it says when I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide. And
when I get to the bottom, I'll go back to the top.
It's like the Torah scribe, the scroll, So
okay. A Helter Skelter or Helter Skelter Lighthouse is an amusement ride resembling a lighthouse.
Yeah.
With a spiral-shaped slide built around the tower. Typically, fairgoers climbed up a flight of stairs. When I go to the bottom, I go back to the stairs inside the tower and slide down the spiral on the outside using a core mat. The ride is most prevalent in amusement parks. So it's like the United Kingdom's version of that little wavy thing that we see in state fairs. Where you hop on like the burlap sack and you go down the slide.
Sure.
Wait.
I've theorized that the film The Lighthouse is actually like referencing this. But
wait.
Sure.
There's spiral staircases, multiple.
It's
Leo and Pitt. Pacino's slap is on time. You suddenly are bringing in the sounds of the movie. Motors
so forth. These are the notes that I took.
Sure, yeah.
Movie, wow, the connections of the songs and the scenes is as strong as Rosemary's Baby. And then I have a note that says spiral staircases, multiple. Wait, they are talking about who he is. Yeah, they're talking about Manson. So there's multiple spiral staircases in the movie.
Yes,
I noticed.
Totally. And even Margot Robbie's intro is tied to that in a way, because there's a stewardess that's going up the
right, because of the
spiral.
airplane. There's the whole TSA, because it's Leo. You have to tie Leo back. Like I tied Leo back to a couple of different. First thing, I tied Leo back to The Quick and the Dead, which is his movie where he plays like a fucking cowboy guy that I never thought of before, but it totally makes sense with the whole Western theme, you know?
Right. He's kind of
because
playing
I never thought about that before. But also, like, there's multiple times, like there's the movie Catch Me If You Can, where Leo is like,
you nailed it, dude. And it's not just him, it's that they're basically cowboys. Like they're like what the look that they're going for, but they're in LA. So it's like, and so the whole thing is that like where Manson came from. What is he from? Kentucky?
I guess. I mean, let's see. Let's look at
he's from Kentucky.
Birthplace.
But yeah, no, so he's spent most of his life in institutions, right? And so every time he would get out, everything was moving faster and faster, and it's getting crazier and crazier. And he jumps out on the scene in the 60s, and it's like, he's kind of viewed as a very, very edgy, figure, and he's a drug dealer too. So he's basically dealing drugs to all these people throughout Hollywood, and he's hanging out with real upper class people. But it was a time of the peace movement, where it's like people's treatment of it was like, oh yeah, well, we're all just kind of doing our thing. Those were crazy times, we got really carried away. Like people will excuse it if you watch like VH1 specials or whatever, where they're talking about, yeah, we were wild. But anyway, my point is that it's a showdown. There's a showdown that happens between Brad Pitt's character and Leonardo DiCaprio's character, which is also tied into war for Leonardo DiCaprio. He's more of a soldier in that sense, because he uses the flamethrower that he used against the Nazis in the film, which also relates to the end of Inglourious Bastards. So it's like kind of tying everything together. And so in this sense, he's the wrath of God in Pulp Fiction, vengeance be upon you, or whatever, the Ezekiel 25:17, the path of the righteous man,
when I lay my vengeance upon you,
and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon you. But it's kind of it's this very brutal scene where you see, Susan Atkins getting that, and then she's in the swimming pool. What does the swimming pool connect to as well? It almost looks like it's literally like what you see when you watch Valley of the Dolls in a scene with Sharon Tate when she's at the pool at this LA home, because it's in the same vicinity, And so
there's pools everywhere. There's pools everywhere in the movie.
But also that in Valley of the Dolls, the part of LA that they're in, that's they're looking at their neighbors. You're looking at their neighbors, and it's Sharon Tate there. Sharon Tate was to play Rosemary in Rosemary's Baby, and she didn't end up playing her. She ended up getting pregnant though, and Mia Farrow was playing what was to be the part.
She ended up getting pregnant with Rosemary's. Hey, did you notice what I put on the thumbnail as Manson's necklace?
Mm-hmm. What was it? Was it Processed Church?
It's Rosemary's.
Oh, you put the devil's pepper on there.
I put the devil's pepper on her.
One. That was ad-libbed, by the way, when she said Tannis anyone, Mia Farrow, when she's looking at the necklace, But yeah, devil's pepper, Sergeant Pepper, Crowley on the corner of the album.
Sergeant Devil's Pepper.
Right. And so,
or I think about like the Rolling Stones album about the Majesty's
Satanic Request, which was released on December 8th, 1960s. No, what was it? There was multiple albums released on December 8th. One of them was Magical Mystery Tour EP. That was released the same day and year as Their Majesty's Satanic Request, which pictures all four Beatles on the cover and is a play on Sgt. Pepper. And so, you know, and you actually, that album, Their Majesty's Satanic Request, syncs perfectly with the Magical Mystery Tour film. So the EP came out the day and year of that, and so that's how that works. So you're supposed to watch the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour movie with the Rolling Stones Their Majesty's Satanic Request. It's a super strong sync. But
okay, so what would you suggest that we watch next? Or are we cool keeping with our thread of the
down.
Gravity of?
Let's just do it. I mean, it's a heavy one, but I'm putting out there with Full Circle and the Haunting of Julia and Double Fantasy.
Okay.
I'm open to other options too. We also got like 13.
No.
There's
going to be a lot of explaining to do.
Right.
I mean, because those are like, The Haunting of Julia is a deep track. These are deep tracks we're messing with.
Yeah, we're looking at deep tracks. But it is also like, this is a particular rabbit hole that I went really far with, and I have not shared this with many people, the full depth of it. And like,
I've been down this track for different reasons, but I think that I can carry this load with you. I can do this.
Groovy. Yeah.
I know the song. I know this. I know because of other research, I've looked into this because, like I said, I feel that 2001, Planet of the Apes, and Rosemary's Baby are connected. I feel that they're like, they have a gestalt. We always use that word, but I feel that like that's proven in The Haunting of Julia, because you're dealing with
such a lesser known thing, and it ties everything together. And the thing that's crazy about it, and I mean this with all sincerity, it feels with that and some of this stuff like I've stumbled on something that's not for me. Like, it's like, everyone has like,
it's not yours. Like
it's not mine. It's like, it feels like it's for somebody.
Right. It's for somebody.
For somebody, and not even for just for themselves, but maybe for somebody else.
I respect that. Because that's like the whole thing here. Sometimes I have things and I'm like, oh, yo, I got a meta egg for you. And people are like, yeah, I don't want that meta egg. I was like, no, but this is like your meta egg
with each other. You know what I mean? Like there's and it's not just like people do an homage to somebody or something like that. That does happen. But this is where there's archetype casting, but there's the what is a concept album. And so I don't think I emphasize that enough sometimes when I talk about sync film stuff, because it's like, you know, when people like albums, when you have a concept album, it's doing the same thing that a film does, where it's literally telling you a story. Right. And the thing is the crazy thing about film too, is that when they tell you their stories, they're generally cyclical, and they'll culminate in a certain point and then they'll twist around. It's hard to explain that, but it's a plot phenomenon where you're just like, and so a lot of times when you're dealing with like a double or a triple round situation, you know, it's like when it comes back around, it communicates often something deeper than it did the first time. And you'll already be like, you know, taking in a sync film, I'll be like, I'm impressed. And then like when it comes back around, it communicates something else using the same words. And so like
that's what I'm saying about Summertime. That's what, when I watched this album, I was like, oh, it hits on Summertime. And then when Summertime came back around, I was like, it hit twice on Summertime. How the hell do you deal with that? Like,
and it's almost like sign language. It's like somebody can be it feels like, call me crazy, it's apophenia, I don't know what the fuck, but it's like it feels like there's something that's like trying to be articulated through the medium. And it tests you to how deep how far with it you're actually going to go. And a lot of them, like certain ones especially, have payoffs where it's like, and I don't even want to this is one of the problems when I'm sharing these with people, I'm doing it on my own, is like, I don't want to like have to like try and tell somebody about the specifics of that, because I want them to have that experience. And I don't want to take that from them on the off chance that they actually watch it. So it's kind of a leap of faith to watch something that's so different like that, you know, like, because, you know, some of them are, you know, cross a certain line. Some of them are just like entertaining, like, oh, I can relate to it this way. I
listen to this album and watch this movie and kind of go, ha ha ha. But sometimes like especially the last two. I mean, I've seen more than just the two that we're talking about, but especially the last two. Like the moods change
the scenes change with the songs. Like the songs have moods, and those moods fit the scenes, and the scenes are, I don't know if it's because scenes are normally digestible in the same amount of time as songs are. I
Right.
think
Well,
that might have something to do with it. Like you
Mm.
segment, so a whole concept album tells a story, but each of those songs are different scenes to that story, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, it's speaking to other layers of what's happening. So like, and you know, and sometimes every so often it feels unmistakable. And so that can have an intense effect. I think it's like that phenomenon. It's like, you know, where you put a subliminal message in an album. Sometimes you can hear it, like when you're just listening, like Pink Floyd's The Wall. There's like a point where you're like, they're backmasking. What does it say? And you go backwards and it says, "Congratulations, you have found the secret backwards message. Please send your answer to old Pink," and then it gives an address or whatever. And you're like, but that, you know, that's intentional and it's there. But they're telling you by doing that, like, you know, you can find little clips of, like, especially John, but it's like when the Beatles are talking on their own and there's just like a camera present. Like there's like one, maybe it's the Imagine documentary, where, you know, the way that they'll be discussing it of how the listener is going to take something, they'll be like, "This will drive them crackers." This will, you know, like literally says that. And you're like, "You want to drive your audience crackers? Like, what are you talking about?" Because, you know, like, so that's the thing. You're like, "I don't know, man, this Paul's dead thing sure looks like it came from you guys." Maybe Paul regretted it later. And he's like, "Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Now I got to deal with people reading into it in all kinds of crazy ways," which can become dangerous, which is the thing that we see with, like, you know, and the place where it almost feels like a major fucking psyop is, it's just like, wait, are we supposed to not, is there like the guards on synchronicity in culture that they're like, "Oh, don't go there," and they're trying to tell us that it's dangerous, and they use certain like events to create like a kind of a trauma around the possibility of going there? Like, am I just crazy?
I don't know. I don't know if it is that. I think that it gives you secrets. I think that like the same place where we store secrets is the same place that stories come from. And if you think that out, it's fucking obvious.
Right.
But if you're trying to be creative, you're going to go into a place that's not a common consensus, and that's where their secret is. And so there's something that we don't understand about where, like, and I think it maybe, I mean, maybe I've cracked too many meta eggs tonight, but maybe it does have something to do with multiverse. Like maybe this happens so many times, and like the Manson murders have happened. It's like you remember that I think it was you who did the interview with Adam Gorightly. Do you remember Adam?
Yeah, that was great. I tried to get him to come on his think tank, and I sent him a clip, and he was like, "I'm not interested." And I don't know if that was because he was just like, "Oh, a bunch of guys talking." I don't know. I was like, "We'd structure it differently for you, guy." Like, you know.
Well, it's just not their side. They're more zine guys. You know what I'm saying? Like he's a researcher.
That was a great conversation though, and I know we had fun.
You,
I was just like,
you did have a great conversation
with
you. And at the very beginning, he said something like he lived in a world where all of the conspiracies about like JFK happened. You know what I'm saying?
He knew
like
Kenneth Grant personally. It was a friend of his. Like he had a lot of communication with Kenneth Grant.
Right.
Wasn't that him? Oh no, am I thinking of Thomas Brown?
No, all of these guys know each other.
Thomas Brown, I stand corrected. Sorry, Adam.
Look. Regardless, because we're wrapping up here. I'm going to give you a little second to give your conclusion and everything, and then I got to go to bed. But here's the thing: like he said that, like, what if all of the different conspiracies that are around JFK were in the same multiverse? You get what I mean? And so the same thing is true, like if you kind of like the whole idea about the assassination of Kennedy or the assassination of Robert Kennedy or or John Lennon. You get what I mean? Like these events maybe happen multiple times in multiple universes. So like if it doesn't happen that way in your universe, perhaps the synchronicity points to a way that it happened in another universe. And that the thing that you really need to focus is that it happened over and over again. So look for the meaning of the whole event and not just over like capstone for the definition of the whole event. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
look at
Well,
like the data.
you're time traveling with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the first place, and then
Right.
the Norman fucking Rockwell is time traveling as well. And it's like it's written from the perspective of like we're coming out of something, so you're like on the other side of it. But it's like
Right.
because you look at the end of the 60s.
Because it's not
She's
Norman
like,
Rockwell, it's Norman fucking Rockwell.
yeah, she's speaking to the end of the fucking 60s, and that's what
Right.
the White Album was, and it's a lullaby. It's telling everyone to fucking go to sleep at the height of the
Yeah.
revolution,
Right.
with what was the British invasion, which was
You're
literally in a
absolutely right.
certain way an invasion. Like, so it's just, and I'm not saying that like that's necessarily even a bad thing. This is all what was supposed to have happened on a certain level, but it's tragic at the same time. We're talking about the birth of tragedy. Like this is then so like is this tragic in this version for the Manson family? Sure. It's not
Collective
tragic
trauma.
to these people, because but they got their karma handed to them. You're looking at instant karma in the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You're looking at insta karma at the end of Once Upon a Time. Bro, that's so perfect. Fuck. That like wraps up both episodes perfectly.
Okay, I have something like personal to share, and I'm hesitant to name a name because I don't know if she would necessarily want me to share this, but it's so you might know who I'm talking about, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's so fucking applicable and interesting to me. So I have two connections to one person in my life who had communication with Charles Manson at one point long before the murders, when he was just a drug dealer living in Hollywood. And I've communicated with him, and he's communicated with me on his thoughts of things. So if you're listening to me being like very like I feel like I have a certain confidence in certain things, I have certain connections in my life, and one of these people I met in London, and we were at a coffee shop near Savile Row, and I brought up that this person that I know had a connection to Charlie, and and he has his opinions about whatever. And I tell her that, and I knew nothing about her history. I had just met this woman that day, and she leans forward and she goes to me. She goes, "What do you think of Charles Manson?" She's a very English person. And I just, without even thinking, I just said Manson. I was like, total piece of shit. But I was like, but that guy has nothing on Dick Cheney. And I said that to her, and she said, I can't argue with that. This is going to sound crazy and whatever, maybe made up to some people. I don't care. She told me that she had gone out from London to Hollywood at that time and lived on that street. And so I don't even know if it's like as close. I'd have to ask her again if it's as close as where they show in the film of these fictional characters that live there. But she knew Sharon and Roman personally, and she asked me that question, and her response to me was, "Well, I can't argue with that." And so, going forth from that and sharing
She was like the real life
my opinions
Leonardo.
on these things, I've also had some communication with Samantha Geimer, who was Polanski's victim. And even though it's digital or whatever, she's had an impact on me, like just her giving a small response to any inquiry that I have about parents. Basically, do parents pimp out their children, and casting agencies are running as prostitution rings in Hollywood? Like, is that something? And and her response, and also with honeymoon. So she acknowledged the honeymoon, bitter moon sync film. I shared it
I
with
can't
her.
wait till we watch that one, but go
And
on.
so,
Go on.
but the point is, I guess, is that for me, it's like, if that person who knew these people, she left Hollywood after that, like a lot of people did, like, because it was, and she's like, that was one of the most horrific things that she's ever been close to in her whole existence. And it was like she left America over it. And and she's sitting there and she's like, well, Manson himself, yeah, bad guy, totally. Who's gonna argue with that? But we got fucking why? Like, this all started with like shit. Like, it goes back further, but like the fact that we're like, we want people to be reprimanded even if they're in positions of power if they do wrongdoing. Everyone wants accountability in America, And so what people are pissed off about is they're like looking at like who's being held to account, and it's like, what is the pecking order of this? Like, you're going to start here. You got to start somewhere. So like, you know, if you change the standard for like what's okay because they're working for us, right? It's a job description. Like people in government are working for the people of the country. If they're not working for us and they're working for themselves or whatever, then you got to fucking deal with that. If you don't, you'll end up with a fucking Versailles situation or whatever the fuck, you know? But it's like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I don't know. And everyone knows that they're being lied to all the time. I like these album film pairings because I can relate to certain, like maybe sometimes darker thematic things, but it's very reflective. Like I can kind of like,
no, this is like you just said it. You said we're being lied to all the time. Like in a way, it's weird because like you know that the album and the movie pairing is a lie, right? However, when you're watching it, you're like, that's a pretty good lie. You're like in on the joke.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
Because that's why it's meta, because you're seeing it from like I wanted to make that point tonight because Andreas said it like when you guys were talking in the think tank, like he made that comment that like all of a sudden there's a different way you see the film.
Right.
Like your mind is thinking about how it relates to the album, but you're also thinking like outside of being in the movie. Because when you go to the movie theaters, the individual who makes the movies wants you to be absorbed in the movie. They want it to be a total experience.
Right.
And I think that I get that now. Like there was a time where you told me that these were meditations. You were like, you need to meditate on them and stuff. And I think I understand that now. You almost need to like sit with them because there's so much more going on than just the music and the film. There's like relationship.
People think doing like a music video type thing. And they're like, does it sync? Like, is it syncopated? It's like, yeah, everything's going to do that to some degree. I'm interested in the meaning, you know? And when the meaning connects like that, that's what gives me the thrill, you know?
Look at this guy.
I missed nothing. Bro, I feel so bad. I'm sorry.
We're just wrapping up. Like
I know. I was like, there's no way they're still going. I screwed that up so bad. I'm sorry. My dad, I had to go check on him.
Are we really wrapping up? Really? Are we really? I hope not. I could go forever, but I understand you guys. It's all up to you. You know, whatever you want to do.
Well, I wanted to mention that, like, while I had watched your sync, I hadn't finished the original movie before I'd seen your sync. And I've done that a few times. I like it better now. I used to think, I should watch the movie first, but I don't know if I really need to do that a lot of the time. I actually feel like watching it after I've seen the sync makes more sense. And similarly, I hadn't listened to Lana Del Rey's album before. That was, I think, the first time I heard most of those songs, maybe like half of them. I've heard a few of them, but not all of them. So it was interesting to me. Like that was like my introduction to it, and that reminded me of what you said when someone had been watching your sync and didn't realize it was a sync.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's something to be said for if you were entertaining the idea that there was some form of intentionality around it, it would be that the people involved would be so familiar with the piece so through and through that, you know, they could watch it on entirely on mute and be aware of every single thing that's being said. Because when you create something, you have that kind of connection to it. How do you allow for something that you've put all that, you know, repetition into and all that, you know, intricacy into, and then be able to relate to it continually, perpetually in a malleable way? I think that
there's got to be money involved. The only reason people would even consider putting that much effort into anything is if they were getting paid.
I don't believe that at all.
It's impossible.
I've agreed with everything you said pretty much in this whole fucking conversation, except for that, because I think that that idea of arts for art's sake, that in Hollywood and in the music industry, they have their own type of religious thing that is more of like a living thing. Like it's like a tapestry that they're all contributing to, and they relate to it in today's version of what people related to mythology as. And so they're creating their own mythology. Some people might have a huge head around that. You can relate to that in all kinds of different ways because nobody's perfect too. But I think that there are a lot of artists, and it's an art for art's sake kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of people will do something as a boon. Like they'll realize like, hey, if this is successful, whatever that means, then I'll have a chance to do something else. And so a lot of it is really just about like, it's not about money per se. It's more about being able to be a brick in the wall different
Right.
movie.
I think it goes beyond the like the contrived part of whatever it is, because it's going to be there. But there's like, if there's a heart in the thing, that's going to run deeper
I think
than
that's
just
I
a
think that
topical
that's
thing.
like yeah. I think
And I can see the incentive for that. Like this is Andreas, I don't
so
know if you
you
knew.
think that the basis of Lana Del Rey's success is that there's heart involved or soul or whatever, however you
Yeah,
want
No,
to
it's like if you manifest your religion, though, like if you manifest something from dream into real life, then that shows that you're like
it
more of
becomes
an
part of
entered
somebody
apprentice in
else's
the
dream.
craft.
right.
Sorry, David, you were about to ask a question.
Oh, was I? What was I going to say? Was it? I don't think it was regarding Lana Del Rey. I can't remember where I was going with that. But you know, what I've argued in the past is this is something that people have for themselves. It's like it's another type of connection to something. And oh yeah, Paul Hollerand. Did you ever meet Paul Hollerand? He was in Lawgivers. They were big in the UK for a while. And then, but yeah, I lived with this guy for a couple years, 2.5 years, something like that. And he was like, he had produced like one album in particular that was like a big studio album, you know, for Lawgivers, and he was going to blow up, but he kind of had a botched interview thing that he can't live down. That just, you know, it was his moment, and it didn't quite go the way he had wanted. But you know, I was living with this guy. I was telling him. I remember the first night I ever told him what I do. I was describing it to him, and I was like, and I've had this thing where a lot of people will repeat different things when I'm sharing sync films with people in person. So like there's just these kind of like classic things that people say, and one of them is, why would they do that? And they'll just say it to themselves and go, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? It's like that's like a reflex thing that happens. Yeah. And I told Paul this, and he goes
because
to
that's
me,
admittance. It's admittance that there's
wait, let him finish the thing. He goes, what?
He goes, exactly, you're right though, Will. But he goes, why wouldn't they do that? And I was like, oh, really now? And I was like, what makes you say that? And he's like, because I've done it. And he was like, when we produced, and he says the name of the album, he was like, we had like gear, and we were like, you know, you're looking at the album like in sequence when it's all coming together and what you're building, and gives you the option to have a visual accompaniment. And he was like, he told me the name of this old sci-fi movie, and he was like, we actually would like play around even like with the volume from the sci-fi movie, and it wouldn't end up in the finished product. And he was like, I think that's a lot of what sampling comes from, is like when people put samples in songs, is because they did this. And so he was like, basically like when you're producing music in a studio space, you have all kinds of options. Oh, do you want some visual accompaniment? Like, and then you're like, well, what's something that I resonate with, or what's something that connects to this concept album? So if you have a concept album in the first place,
we know for a fact, because
like,
we've talked to some individuals, and they said that they didn't do it intentionally. I mean, I think
if any individual was to ever, this is like Freemasonry 101, and I'm not saying it's a Freemasonic thing. I'm just saying that there is, when it comes to secrecy, when it comes to not even if it's just fraternal, but if there's something else going on there, what is the number one fucking rule? You don't talk about Fight Club. Like you don't, and if you do, you ruin the fucking thing on a certain level, because you want people to not fucking know. Because it's that cognitive dissonance that we need to fucking be comfortable enough with.
That makes them even search for it. Like,
because you never get insight without cognitive dissonance. That's why people don't want to fucking, like, arguments are uncomfortable, is because it's in that discomfort that you fucking become more flexible. You have an elasticity in your intellect and your emotions the same way that you have like with stretching. Like if you stretch and you hold a pose for a certain amount of time, you become more flexible. If you do that with your intellect or your emotions, you find yourself in that place. And that's what I come across when I share sync films with people, is that they end up running straight into that cognitive dissonance. Right. And it can be a powerful thing.
Will, did you ever watch Dobie Gillis, Will?
I know what Dobie Gillis is, isn't that?
Yeah. So there's
John C. Reilly.
Episode 8 of season 1 is called The Old Goat. And in The Old Goat, the entire high school is going up against another high school. And what they do for their sports team is they steal the other team's mascot. The other team's mascot is this goat, right? And so by stealing the goat, the other team has lost its morale. And, you know, this means your team's probably going to win. The problem is the person who stole the goat is Dobie. And Dobie can't tell anyone, because he knows if he told everyone, they would think, oh, it's so cool that you stole the goat. But also it would ruin that he stole the goat.
Right.
So it's this gnarly paradox the whole episode.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, Andreas. Nailed it. It's that thing, and it's like when somebody knows that their neighbor's having an affair, and they might want to tell the wife because they like feel bad for her and they have to interact with her and like that. I guess that's fucked up. But then they're also having an affair, so they can't say shit. That's why I'm not as worried about nuclear war. Like I can worry about nuclear war, sure, like any other guy. But at the same time, I'm like, well, if you know that if you do this, that they're going to do, at least that's something there, you know, some insurance, you know. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. And it's funny as hell that it's a goat too.
Yeah,
like
Get
there's
the
always goats. Goat, you know, goat. The she goat. That's the 77 gematria. That's the same. It's Oz. Oz also means she goat, as well as strength in Hebrew. So Yakin and Boaz. That's the goat. And so then you have the scapegoat, and there's two scapegoats, just like there's two pillars.
King Kong is the greatest of all time.
And the one that's released into the wilderness goes to the Klipot, and the other one's sacrificed to Hashem, which is the actual Oz of the thing. Not the second pillar, but the first, where in the spiral, the way it's twisting. And so they go as two different coexisting orders. And so my feeling with album film pairing is I think that in certain cases, it like approaches this place where you can see the two orders meeting if you're paying enough attention. Because you can see if they did do any degree of intention, that's like what we're working with. Because we have a mimicking of this other thing, but it's going to approximate it. It's not going to be exact, but it does things that you just can't explain. Like if you're watching like Metropolis with Lady Gaga's The Fame Monster, and the subtitle says kill him, and in one moment, and in the same exact moment in the sample on the album, it goes kill him. It's like, what the fuck? Like, and I mean,
it happens multiple times during each film, but that's why, like, I thought it was interesting when you were talking about, like, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Because they're talking to themselves.
You know, so many people do that, and it's fascinating. I feel like a sense of like what the psychoanalyst gets to feel, because he's there to the side while they're telling you their experience, and it's like I get to witness the like character armor or whatever is going on internally. That's like all the different resistances, because you could like, wait, no,
they're not talking to you. They're not trying to argue it with you. They're arguing with themselves because they already see the relationship.
Right. And I'm like, we'll watch, shows on Netflix for days. And I'm like, dude, like I'm asking certain friends of mine, I'll be like, can you give me an hour and a half? Can you give me 2 hours to share something with you? It's like, oh, to pay attention to for that length of time. And it's like, I feel like earlier in my life, like even in the 90s, it's like people were more like oriented to do that. Like, but like maybe there's been a shift that's happened. Like this became popular in the 70s because of a radio call-in. Somebody called up a radio station and told them about Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz. I speculate that it was a leak. I think it was one example of a leak, and that leak was chosen because it was just that good. And they were like, somebody's going to drop this, and you got people working together to do it. I think
they probably were worried that no one had figured it out yet. And they're like, well, that's crazy. We can't just wait around for someone.
We can't just let it slide by like that.
Yeah,
that's possible too. It's true.
All right. So, okay. Thank you guys for watching. Everyone in the chat room. You have been groomed well in the chat, guys. So look, all right, we haven't really decided what we're going to do next. I think that I liked your idea though, David. I want to do something different with Andreas. I want to look at I Heart Huckabee, because you're going to have to give me time to edit it, because
I'll watch it tonight again. I love that movie. I remember you were saying that I had said something about that movie to you, and I don't even remember what it is, but what's the thing that you were like, what did I say that made you?
We were talking about Planet of the Apes, I think is the last time when we brought it up. But what I wanted to say to you, if you're going to watch it tonight, because it has to do with Leo, his his wife in Inception is the main, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but is the LaForce lady off of I Heart Huckabee.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Now here's the thing. When they go to town on the log, I want you to look really close to this log. Right? Because you know what I'm talking about? The scene where they have sex in
the anal scene in the mud.
Yeah, existential.
Right. Or are you talking about when
there's not a real log? It's a giant. It's a giant penis. Look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't be
Because they-
surprising. Yeah, but the LaForce thing. Oh yeah, and then it's also that they're looking for pictures of Lang.
Yeah.
So Jason Schwartzman was in there looking for pictures of Jessica Lang supposedly, but he was
Right.
really looking for pictures of what's the actress's name in
Naomi Watts, who played in
Naomi
Tank Girl.
Naomi
Naomi
Watts.
Watts.
And
They're both
while
the
he was
King Kong
planting
ladies.
or he was planting pictures himself. So she played the same role as
Naomi Watts played Jessica Lange in the Peter Jackson movie for King Kong.
Yeah, so in the 1970s,
Naomi Watts played Jessica Lange's character.
So that's an ABBA sync with Arrival when they're in the helicopter on the cover, because he gets killed by helicopters at the end of that movie. It goes exactly 4 rounds, that album, with the original King Kong, and to the second.
Start to finish?
Four complete rounds.
So what do you do with your movies before we leave? Because we're at two hours here. So do you, like, how do you line it up? Do you just start the movie at the beginning, or do you figure out how it ends and then go from
Actually, if you're interested in that, if you look at the website above the movies, there's that little paragraph. There's actually a link to an interview that I did with Tamara Lucid, which was originally for Reality Sandwich, and that has a full explanation of my process, because there's different ways that I go about different ones depending. And so sometimes they just scream at me and they resonate, and other times there's like weird date shit happening that also has like symbolic significance for the particular days. Like you were talking about, like the falling down one with Ace of Base, like that connects to the first bombing of the World Trade Center, and it's explained at the beginning with the context there that it was a date thing. Falling Down came out, was released the day and year of that bomb exploding. So there's a whole thing there.
Plus Tank Girl and Jet Girl. We don't have time for that, but it's definitely tied. The Kangaroos, King Kong, Primal Beast. Yeah.
Andreas needs some sleep, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Like, please just subscribe.
I'll just wait till after.
Just give up the ghost and subscribe to Meta Egg.
And yeah, if you're watching my channel, go check Meta Egg's channel out. Subscribe, like this video, but also check out his other work. Particularly, Frank Zero and him are doing the Spider-Man string theory web. The quantum.
Well, wait. We got one coming up this weekend. I think that we've got it locked in. It's called something about like
something about
UFO misdirection, and
we should do something about Mary Magdalene at some point.
Warner Von Braun. Oh, bro, I got like a short that I've made about Mary Magdalene, and
I'll work on like a Ben Stiller poster for the episode. It'll be good.
Bro, I gotta admit though, every time I bring up some crazy shit about Mary Magdalene, even if I don't even say her name, you're like, wait, this is Mary Magdalene. I know what this is. It's like, dude.
I'm a big fan. I'll admit it.
He's done enough deep dives. He's dived into Mary Magdalene many times. So, she's one of those.
Yeah, it's a common theme. It's a Beauty and the Beast thing. Mary
Magdalene. I like how that
sounds. Thank you, dude. That's exactly the fucking thing. King Kong is Beauty and the Beast. And so, like, if you're going to see the whole, so Lily Tomlin then is in Higher Huckabees. She's the Incredible Shrinking Woman. Look at the cover of Incredible Shrinking Woman with the big gorilla.
Yeah. It's like Harold and Maude. Like we were talking about, like the girl from Harold and Maude, the idea of like big love, the Paxton, the Bill Paxton show about Mormonism and polygamy. Like it's called Big Love, but that's King Kong. Like the whole idea of like all of these,
and they use Brian Wilson in the Beach Boys, which ties us right back to Charles Manson and to Panic Canyon.
Dum.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Meta Egg is a place where we can get meta. Thank you for joining us, and